think he called them the loudmouths on social media would have it. Britain's a country of sort of strivers who have respect for each other and are tolerant and have a bit of grit and determination about them. So there's a lot of that in there. Some really strong language about the riots. It said he would never let racist thugs terrorize our communities, that sort of thing. Really, really strong words there. That I think got probably the biggest response.
Yeah, that's true. Mikey, I'm feeling a bit tired and I have to say a little bit grumpy this morning. We're a bit sleep deprived, both of us, because we were out till the wee small hours at the Mirror Party at the Labour Party conference. So it's your paper's gig. Yes. Tell us about it.
Well, it's our fault that
It is your fault. Yeah, I'm blaming you personally for my lack of sleep.
We're very sorry. Not sorry at all. It was a great do. We had hundreds of people from around Labour Party conference there. We had half the cabinet there, I think.
Lucy Powell up on the karaoke, Colours leader.
Wes Streeting was there, sang...
he did. He sang with John
He sang
Ashworth.
Oasis with John Ashworth. Yeah. We had...
You sang, I remember that.
I did sing. But
it was Bon Jovi?
It was Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
It was Living on a Prayer, which is a song about making brilliant things happen with limited resources, which I think everyone knows about.
Draw your own conclusions from that, listeners. But it was a big night. It is a traditional kind of end of party conference do. I always think they're great do's. Everyone really enjoys them. We all had a good time. We all had a little sing along. I always think that I remember the time when I actually once went to one of these parties. I don't think it was actually a Mirror Party, but I went to a karaoke do at a party conference, and I think it was a Conservative Party one. I was telling some actual friends from the real world, that after dinner I would be leaving them to go to watch Conservative cabinet ministers do karaoke, and they looked at me as though I was from planet Mars. And I think sometimes we forget that actually these things are great fun, but in the real world people just think these are like, why would you do this? This is ludicrous.
Very weird.
But it was a good night. If you're into that kind of thing, it was fun.
It was a good night. It was a late night. But yes, everyone had fun. And Angela Rayner gave a lovely speech at the beginning. Keir Starmer would normally have been there. He
jetted off. He
had to send his apologies because he has gone to New York about an hour before the doors opened. But it was a good end to the Labour Party conference. There is actually still a bit of business going on today, but the main event, Keir Starmer's speech, happened yesterday on Tuesday. So let's get into that. Let's get into how you think he did. So, Keir Starmer, his big conference speech, it was about 55 minutes or so. We've polled readers, we've done them separate polls, Daily Express, Daily Mirror, and I can just tell you, so the Daily Express, how did our readers think Keir Starmer did? Do they feel positively or negatively? After the speech, 20% had a positive reaction, 80% were negative. What about your readers? I believe our readers are on this card. It was 60% thought it was positive and 40% thought negative. So,
what did you think? You tell us.
What did I think?
Tell us what the main themes of the speech were and whether you thought it went well.
So there was a sort of a combination in there of trying to buoy people up a little bit, because there's been a fair amount of doom and gloom around. So there was a lot of lists of things that Labour have accomplished already since they've taken power, which got people cheering, as you'd imagine. There was also some sort of key points I think Starmer wanted to hit. He's all about trying to paint this picture of Britain as he sees it, which is not necessarily the same as, I think he called them the loudmouths on social media would have it. Britain's a country of sort of strivers who have respect for each other and are tolerant and have a bit of grit and determination about them. So there's a lot of that in there. Some really strong language about the riots. It said he would never let racist thugs terrorize our communities, that sort of thing. Really, really strong words there. That I think got probably the biggest response.
Yeah, that's true.
Through it, I think it was. I mean, to use a tired football metaphor, a speech of two halves. I feel like some of it was written more recently than the rest of it, but there was some interesting language in there, I thought. But
was that? I've missed that bit.
We will turn our collars up and face the storm. I thought it was a lovely bit of poetry in there. Did not land in the room at all. That got cricket applause, but.
It was a strange speech. I thought it was. It felt quite flat. There was huge applause at the end, and obviously you've got a Labour Party where the members are jubilant, but the cabinet are less so. They've kind of hit the hard reality of government and realised that actually after lobbying rocks from the sidelines for 14 years, once you get in there, it's not quite as easy as perhaps you might think. And it was interesting to me because I came away from the speech wondering what the real point of it was. What was the message he was trying to land? And I wasn't really quite sure. And I think you're right. The strongest bit was the riots bit. I know that really hit home in the hall. And I spoke to some of his newer MPs later that night at the Mirror Party. We'd had a few drinks, but one of them was really passionately saying, "Oh, that bit really, for me, was the key bit. I felt really." Pleased with how he kind of dealt with that. But I have to say in the hall that the kind of tone Keir Starmer strikes sometimes, it does just feel like he's a bit disappointed head teacher. You do feel a bit like you're being told off. And I came away and I thought, what is the thing that people in the pub would be chatting about after that speech? And I'm really not sure what it was. There was one thing that I thought actually was really positive, and I'm really pleased to see happen, and I know our readers will be, which was the announcement about Homes for Heroes. So military veterans, often when they come, back from service, they go out onto Civvy Street. They're kind of almost, I mean, the previous government did have a kind of big commitment towards veterans, and a lot of progress has been made, but there's still this issue where actually trying to get home, if you land back in the UK after whatever you've been doing, you might not have the local links that you used to have, often we know marriage breakdown, that kind of thing. And if you haven't got a local link, it's really hard for you to get on a housing waiting list. So they're going to change that. They're going to make it so that if you are a military veteran, you will be prioritised for housing. I think that's a really good move. But that was really the only bit of policy in that speech. And so the rest of it, I'm slightly baffled by, really.
Yeah, that was the only surprise. That and GB Energy going to Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Which we kind of
But nobody really understands what GB Energy is yet.
We kind of knew about that already.
It's a power company that doesn't produce power. That's going to cost a lot of money. But anyway, perhaps that's for another day, another podcast episode.
But yeah, no, there was one thing that everyone was talking about afterwards, which was
the gaff.
An unfortunate slipping up on words. Perhaps he hadn't had his breakfast.
Perhaps he was thinking too much about his breakfast.
Yeah, possibly. But yes, he called for the return of the sausages from Gaza, which...
Of all the things to mix up was just like, oh dear.
That is... I think probably because of the lack of sort of a strong line from it, I think that's taken up a lot of the oxygen. Yeah,
it was the bit that kind of, took over social media. Have to remember the social media is not the world. People out there will be going busily about their lives and be completely unaware of the sausages gaff. But in terms of the reaction in the afternoon, a lot of it did focus on that very unfortunate gaff. A very serious part of the speech with a very, unfortunate slip up. But yeah, I don't think in the hall actually we even really realised that, because there was a big cheer because he'd told the hall that he wanted an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and obviously this is a big issue in the Labour Party. It's been quite a problem for him. In the past, so there was a big cheer at that point, and then so it was only if you were watching on TV that you actually heard the gaff. People in the hall didn't even notice it. It was only kind of afterwards we all realised. But I think you're right. There was no real clear message, so that did strike home. I think it was I just don't really get what the point of it was. And afterwards, when we were talking to his aides, we were saying, like, look, where was the policy in this? Why was there no announcements? And they rightly made the point, look, we've only just had a King's speech. That set out our kind of legislative agenda. That is our policy agenda. We don't really have any new policy because we've just done a whole swathe of it. That's a very fair point to make. But if you're not going to announce policy, you have to have a kind of big, strong message that people come away understanding the point too. And I don't think anybody really did.
No.
And also, one person, we know he's gone off to the United Nations today.
Yes.
One person did say it did feel a bit like he was a bit like, come on, I've only got an hour, I've got a plane to catch, let's rattle through this and then I've got to go. And he did actually, there was a little bit of that. He didn't really hang around, did he? It was very functional.
Yeah, it was functional.
Yeah.
It was about the same length as last year, I think.
Yeah, roughly.
Just short of an hour. But yeah, no, it was. It's not going to go down in history as one of the great conference speeches, I don't think. But there was some stuff in there that I thought was nice, if not sort of didn't raise the roof. The other thing, obviously, was the protester towards the end. A guy got up and started shouting some things about Gaza. Was immediately bundled out. I don't think I've ever seen a protester derail a speaker less than that guy. Starmer didn't drop a beat. He immediately made a crack about him coming to the, he thinks he's coming to the 2019 conference. And I think actually that put a bit of nervous energy into the crowd.
Yeah.
And just in time for his final flourish.
Yeah.
Which was received rapturously.
I think the protester thing, it's become really kind of, everybody expects a protester now.
Yeah.
He expected a protester. He had lines ready to deliver if a protest happened. Same with Rachel Reeves. It's all a bit kind of tedious. It doesn't really attract any attention anymore. It's a bit like, oh, right, there's today's protester. I think, they need to be a bit more imaginative if they want to capture the nation's attention. That's my little tip to protesters out there.
That's actually really interesting, though. The audience were really well behaved, except that guy.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone from Starmer's team last night who was saying once they got past Winter Fuel, they thought they were fine.
Yeah.
There was a line about Winter Fuel, and we were all looking around like this, waiting for someone to jump up and go, "Arr," and no one did, and they just breathed out at that point and thought we're fine now. And it was in the last couple of minutes of the speech. It's like, not the best timing.
Talking of protests, I attended a trade unions protest on the perimeter of the conference, which is quite unusual. The Daily Express and the trade unions.
I was going to say, first time.
It's the Winter Fuel Course, and it's brought together some very strange bedfellows. We had the Daily Express a few weeks ago. I was talking about how we had a rally on College Green in Westminster, and we had Conservative MPs, Reform MPs, and Green peers and MPs. And so, this, I think it's interesting that it shows the scale of the anger about it. This is not a right or a left issue.
No.
This is absolutely across the board. And when you've got the Daily Express and the trade unions in the same position, you've got the Greens, Reform and the Conservatives. And the SNP and Lib Dem. I mean, there isn't, all the charities are against it, the think tanks are against it, the parties are against it, most of the media are against it. The only people, actually half the backbench of the Labour Party are against it. The only people who actually are for it seems to be Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, and they are not for budging on this. No. And so anyway, the Unite the Union organised a protest, which they held in, I have to say, commitment to the cause. They held it in, despite the torrential rain, and it really, really was terrible weather conditions. But people still turned out because people are furious about it. One chap I spoke to who came from Sheffield, he wasn't a member of the union. He just had heard about the protest and wanted to make his feelings known about it. And obviously, as the Express, we went down there to speak to people and hear their views about it. Inside the hall, as you say, Keir Starmer did address it in his speech, but the tone I'm getting from people inside government is very much what one senior figure in the government said to my colleague, when are you lot going to shut up about this? We're not changing our mind. And so, I just think, okay, that they have decided to pick this fight. They are not going to back down on it. But I think, okay, fine, neither are we. We are representing our readers, and it's a huge, huge problem.
I mean, I can't argue with any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, to start with, the Tory peers and the Green peers, isn't it funny how parties get behind policies that affect people who are more likely to vote? That's a strange thing.
But that's life, isn't it?
Totally.
If young people want to capture the imagination of political parties, they have to be active and make sure that their votes count. And if you stay at home, then you can't really complain.
But you're right. The party have completely dug in on this one, or the leadership have completely dug in on this one. There are bits of it that are baffling to me. I don't know why they haven't, to take some of the sting out of it, I don't know why they haven't looked at sort of shifting the threshold for pension credit a little bit, just a little bit, to have a few, because they can play with that. That's not super hard to do. They might have to do it at the budget, but it's not super hard to do, and that would take all the sting out of it, or a lot of it. It's a really, really weird hill they've chosen to die on this one.
It is, because it's not the poorest pensioners. Let's make that clear, that because they are the people on pension credit, but it is still at least 2 million people who are really struggling. They are not rich, and obviously we've had this clothing row and the donor row, haven't we? And it just, when you contrast that, Keir Starmer accepting clothes for his wife. Yeah, he expects pensioners on £13,000 to manage their budget, minus up to £300 just within a matter of months, So it just is a really bad contrast, I think, that he can't find the money in his own personal household budget to pay for his own clothes and his wife's. But pensioners have to, within a matter of months, scroll together that extra cash, and I just think that's a really bad look.
I should say, full disclosure, my suit was provided by Lord Matalan. He's a good friend, likes to help me out. So yeah, I think the same day as that protest, I got up really early when it was similarly torrential. Something about Liverpool, I understand. We love Liverpool to pieces, but it does rain a lot there. But I was taken to just outside the Museum of Liverpool, right in front of the Liver building, to see 3 shiny buses. And I kind of have a thing. I don't want to say I have a thing for buses, because that makes me sound like one of those guys with a notepad.
Just a little bit.
I'm not that guy. My thing about buses is that it's the most used form of public transport in the country. Dramatically more people use buses than use trains, but you would not know that for how much airtime it gets and how much attention it gets in Westminster. So what's happening is, this was Louise Haigh, who was the Transport Secretary, and she was unveiling the new publicly controlled buses in Liverpool. So for the first time in 40 years or so, since the deregulation of the buses under Thatcher, councils and combined authorities, mayors, are going to be allowed to run their own bus services again. This sort of started with Andy Burnham in Manchester has got the B network, which is sort of a publicly controlled network of buses that runs alongside the private companies. And this is a really big thing. It's something Lou Haig's putting quite a lot of time into, which you wouldn't under previous administrations necessarily see.
Wow, I would just say, on the last Conservative government in the last couple of years introduced the £2 bus fare. And I can reveal I went all the way from York to Whitby up for £2.
You did that. Thought about doing
this
that.
is very geeky, isn't it? I'm missing quite how nerdy I am. But it's the most scenic bus route in the country.
Oh, amazing.
You go past Flamingo Land. There's lots of it's a great bus route. £2. So that was quite but that was a Conservative policy. They did introduce that because I think actually they do recognise that actually most people do use buses.
So I was looking up some polling from I found some from June. YouGov did a poll of how many people actually take trains, and I think it was 21% had only taken one in the last 6 months, and it's something like 27% never take trains of the country, which is just
because they're far too expensive. Who can afford them?
And generally not very good.
Yeah. Stressful, late, and expensive. Not really a recommendation for most people.
Go buses. So you went to another conference this week, didn't you?
The Labour Party conference was not my first conference of the season. I went to the Reform conference, which was in Birmingham. And actually, it was 4,000 people turned out. It's quite a big do. It's a completely different atmosphere to the Labour conference or the Conservative conference. It's more like a party. They very much call it, our party conference. They had lanyards where you could hold your beer. You could get a beer from 10:30 in the morning, but they limited you to 4 at a time. It was a very different vibe. But what was interesting was because they don't have all the fringe events that traditional conferences have, everything is about the speeches on the main stage, which is not how most conferences operate. Most conferences operate on the fringes, don't we? We very rarely go into the conference hall only for the leader's speech. This was completely different. Like, all the speeches were attended by pretty much everybody who turned up. So you had like 4,000 people listening to every speech. And the crowd was so enthusiastic. They were so happy and they were so engaged with what the speakers were saying. What was interesting though was so Rupert Lowe, one of the new MPs, he got up and made this speech where he got a really good reception, and he was talking about how he wants to axe diversity departments in corporations, things like that. That was getting a lot of support. He also mentioned that he wanted to axe devolution, which seemed like quite a big policy to announce. And when we spoke to the press team after, is axing devolution a Reform Party policy? And no. Okay, do you as a party, do you look at all the speeches before you're... Oh, no. So essentially, if you're a Reform MP, you can go on the conference stage, you can say whatever the hell you like, but it doesn't mean it's party policy. So it's a very different approach to party conferences. Yeah. One thing though, because obviously the whole point of it, Nigel Farage said he wanted to professionalise the party. And this has always been a big problem. So in UKIP, in the Brexit Party, there is a national groundswell of support for the idea, whether it is leaving the EU or whatever. And they struggle to kind of translate that into the voting system we have. So you really need to have like constituency, grassroots operations. So they're going to model themselves on the Lib Dems. They're really good at clinging on locally. They will build and so they're going to look at replicating that. The problem is, I think, for Reform, the people who love Reform and Nigel Farage love him and the party because they are the renegade party, they are the insurgent party, they're the rebels. They get up on stage and say whatever the hell they like because they don't kind of have a party line to toe. They don't have anybody saying, no, you can't do that. They can speak from the heart and say whatever they want because they're not disciplined in the same way. Now, I spoke to Nigel Farage and said, look, this is the problem, isn't it? This is why you're popular, because you say the things people think out in the country that other parties can't say. And he said, no, it's fine. It won't be a problem. But I think if you professionalise Reform, you make them like the Conservative Party, you make them like the Labour Party, you make them like the Lib Dems even. And then you take away the exciting bit, the bit that people like. So I think they've got a real problem. Like, how do you actually professionalise that party, but keep the bit that the people who support it love? I think they're going to really struggle with that.
I do not disagree with you at all. I think it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how it happens. I think you'll know better than I do, but I did wonder how the 5 Reform MPs are getting on with sort of being, well, particularly Nigel Farage, who is used to being, the big man on stage giving his rousing speeches, is how he's getting on with being one guy sitting on a green bench among 650 people with the same sort of level of attention. I'm fascinated to see how that all.
It will be interesting to see how they all, in 2 years' time, are they all still as tight knit, or do they start to clash a little bit? I don't know. We will watch that play out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to report on that journey, let's say.
Yes. So what was your moment of the week?
Oh, for me, it was returning to Liverpool. I many years ago, when I was a young reporter, I worked for a few years in Liverpool. It's a city I love very dearly. When you arrive in Liverpool, even in the driving rain, as I did, seeing the Three Graces on the Liverpool skyline, it's a beautiful city, and it's a spirited city, and you always have good fun with the locals. They always want to chat, and they've always got a view, and I like that. They've got fighting spirit and a bit of soul, and that's a great thing. What about you, Mikey?
My mind is drawn immediately to last night's festivities. So I think my moment of the week was seeing Wes Streeting get up on stage with Jonathan Ashworth and belting out "Don't Look Back in Anger" by Oasis at the Mirror Party last night. It's possible I'm thinking of that as my moment of the week because it's all I can remember. No, it's fun. But yeah, no, it was a big crowd sing along and sort of a big bouncy moment at the end of what was a slightly doom and gloom and rainy conference. But it was a nice moment.
Well, I think that's it for now, and we will be back next week. We will be reporting from the Conservative Party conference next week, so we'll give you all the gossip from behind the scenes of that.
Cannot wait.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.